Welcome everyone to Biocentrica Presents. This week we have AlphaBeat01. He's going to run us through the design development and risk management in medical devices. It's going to be an excellent presentation. AlphaBeat, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. It will be a very brief introduction on design development risk management in medical devices. I'll be diving into the practical aspects of it, starting with prototyping, design and development, independent verification and validation, which is three of these are the crucial steps. And then lastly, it will be uh, going through the change control process of yours and then the regulatory submission. So some housekeeping and audience guidelines, which Penny has already shared. So no need to repeat that.
Real
Okay,
quick,
about
AlphaBeat, I
myself.
think
So
I think the slides are stuck on the PowerPoint version instead of presentation mode.
okay, let me share the whole screen instead of. Is this better?
I don't believe it's
I just
sharing
shared my whole
anything.
screen.
We're not seeing image.
Okay, is this visible now?
Something's coming up. Yes, I see the PowerPoint window. Do you mind flipping
Yeah,
back and
yeah,
forth? Okay, perfect. Yeah, that
yeah.
works.
I think the presentation video mode was making it an issue.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, perfect.
So yeah, I'll just keep it this way.
Excellent.
Okay, so housekeeping and audience guidelines. Penny has already shared that with you. So no need to go over through them again. And about myself, my name is Fezan. I have been doing this for 4 years now. I've mainly have experience with our local regulatory body, which is STRAP. And when it comes to international experience, I have solely experience of FDA 510K submissions because our devices are class 2. Other than that, I am a certified lead auditor, and on the side, I did data analyst as well, which helps me generate pretty graphs and analyze them and see um, where we went wrong, and then perform corrective actions accordingly. Lastly, it's types of softwares that help you make your things easier, make your life better, not only for yourself but for others as well. So that's your digital systems, your quality management systems, your application lifecycle management systems, and your enterprise resource planning systems. All right. Coming to the overview, this is the overview of the whole, but the whole presentation is going to be. I'll starting with the initial risk analysis of your device, how to perform that, then coming to the initial requirements, how to derive the initial requirements of your device. Once you have the base setup, it will help you guide your prototype in the right direction. And once the things start working, you will move into the design control, which is, you can say, like a formal way to perform the design. And then once you have gone through all of that procedure, then you'll be ready for submission. So this is like a very brief overview of what I'll be talking about. Coming to the initial risk analysis. So in this one, we are basically asking ourselves the question, what can possibly go wrong? So the main questions will be like if you have thought of a device, right? Uh, Before you even touch the design part of it, you just in this stage you just ask questions. What went wrong with devices that are similar to mine? Did those devices cause any injury or death to the patients? how did those incidents happen, and how often did they occur. So the thing about the risk analysis in medical devices is that it's instead of being device centric, it's patient centric. Um, so the risk isn't that the device will fail. The risk is that is the patient will get harmed or not. So it's all about the patient. So starting off with that, FDA has a really nice setup regarding uh, to basically help you oversee the complaints that have been registered to the FDA, basically a summary of it. So if you search FDA TPLC database, I have shared its link here as well. For this, you need to have to know your product code. You can have a regulatory consultant help you with that. Or if you're like absolutely clear about a device that, for example, your device is exactly like that's already in the US market, then you can check their 510(k) summary. I'll talk about that later, how to do that. But for this to work properly, you need to be absolutely sure about your product code. You enter your product code, and then it gives you your relevant standard, which you can see over here. So this is for our device. The our device product code is FKX, and it's showing me the recognized consensus standard, which is 60601-2-39 IEC. It's also showing me the submission type. So it's not a PMA, it's not excluded, it's a 510(k). All right. So you can click for now at the TPLC product code report, and it will show you this. So just make sure that you select the earliest year so it can give you the whole picture. And it will show you the device problems, all of the device problems that have been reported to the FDA, and the frequency of them. So, for example, the disconnection uh, device problem has been reported this many times. And this gives you like an idea of what uh, problems have gone wrong and have been reported to the FDA that had a chance of like injury or even sometimes death to the patient. Similarly, we have a list of patient problems as well. So this gives you like a brief overview of what patient problems have been reported to the FDA for this particular device. It also gives you a brief overview of the recalls that have been reported, by what manufacturer, the type of recall class, and the date that it was reported to. So that was like an overview. But if you want to analyze um, what happened, what was the issue, how did they resolve it, um, did it lead to any, did it lead to like multiple malfunctions or multiple injuries? That type of information you will get in from an MTR. You can also get the MTR of that specific issue. Let me just go up here. You can click on any of these as they're all clickable, and it will just show you the MTRs that are relevant to that particular device problem or patient problem that has been reported. So you will only see those. But if you want to do like a thorough analysis, you'll have to go to the MAUDE database. It's just a lot easier to download MTRs from there than from TPLC because that's structured in its own particular way. Over here, you can basically do a filter of the duration of the MTRs that you want to see and write your product code, and you can use other fields as well if you want to. The best way to do it is do it like by 6 months. or like an year, because uh, the there's like a limit on how many MTRs can the MAUDE database show you at a particular time. It's 500. So you have to make sure that every time you basically set the date filter, it's showing you MTRs under 500. Because if it's 500, you are not sure if they were more than 500 or not. So you will miss some. So the best way is to just adjust it so you get a lower number than 500. That way you will make sure that you have all the MTRs that were reported so you can analyze them later. So within an MTR, you will find information like this. You have your particular device problem, your patient problem, the event date, the injury, the manufacturer's narrative, like um, what what's their narrative about that event, and the event description itself. So this is just tells you about what happened, like A led to B, led to C, which led to D. So it's not talking about why it's not our issue. It's just stating the story of that. Why it wasn't your issue, that's what you mention in your manufacturing narrative. Regarding the device problem code and patient problem code, these codes are related to IMDRF. It's an international body that basically um, has a dictionary of all the device problems and all the patient problems. So this keeps everything very easy to track and trend if you want to. So you can basically trend your own warnings or errors or any issues that you are facing that are particular to your device. But using these early on and make them built into your quality management system will help you keep everything consistent. So even if your device is evolving over time, or if you have more devices, um, like once you update them or like they continue the development, you will be adding new errors or warnings into them which didn't exist before. So this removes the dependency using these standardized terms. It removes the dependency on your errors and warnings dictionaries. So you can actually compare with what you had 5 years ago to what you have now with the same dictionary. All right, moving on. So the relevant standard is ISO 14971, but before going through that, I will highly recommend if you go through the ISO/TR 24971 Annex A. Um, the questions in there are very much relevant to when you're figuring out what can basically go wrong with a device. Um, it's not that much relevant at that stage, uh, uh, like in the initial stage that, oh, my device won't have this, my device won't have that. But it's better to just like go through this early on without having clear concept of what your device will be. You just need to know at this point that you'll be making this or you'll be making that, or it will be a combination of something. Um, the it's a different discussion, but like regarding the regulatory pathway, the 510(k), it's just a submission type which makes sure that what your device does is exactly to another device that's already in the market, and you are doing exactly what they are doing, and it's safe and effective for the patient. That's all you're doing. So you are not innovating anything. You are just trying to get into the market with this submission done. So that's like your first step into the medical device business. Once you have a 510(k) cleared, you uh, get into the market, you establish yourself, you capture the market share, you get the revenue coming. and then you use that revenue to uh, drive something innovative that will be later like a PMA or something that might require clinical trials or something like that. That's a separate discussion, but this whole thing will help you with the 510K. So just getting into the market, get the revenue, get the business up and running. So these questions will help you answer the intended use. Is it implantable? Will there be any patient contact? Can it be reused? Is it sterile? So that means you need to sterilize it. What will be the shelf life of it that you expect? Any environment influence that it can have? Will it have software? If it has software, then it will involve cybersecurity as well. If it's will it require maintenance or not, like periodic maintenance or something like that. So these are all the questions that you should go through. It's a lot more detailed than what I shared here, but it's a good exercise, a very good exercise to just help you know more about what you are going to do. Then you start with the ISO 14971, which is basically a hazards traceability matrix. So as I mentioned earlier, the harms here are with respect to the patient. They are not with respect to the device. So you can come up with hazard. These are all, so that's where the TPLC database comes in that I mentioned earlier, where you have all the uh, reported events to the FDA. So going through those, downloading the MTRs, going through the MTRs, it will help you understand the hazards and the sequence of events that led to those hazards, the hazardous situation that it created, and what harm did the patient get. So establishing this will heavily drive your design and development later on, which I'll come to that. So here's an example right from the standard itself. This can also involve cybersecurity hazards as well, especially if your device has software. So hazard can be loss of data integrity, loss of data availability, loss of data confidentiality, and using your own knowledge and along with the MTRs, they can help you greatly in driving the sequence of events and the hazardous situation that it can create, and ultimately the harm that it can cause to the patient. Uh, any questions so far, Penny, or anyone else?
No questions yet. I have to say, cybersecurity hazards are not something that I would have thought of being medically device related or medical device related. So it's really interesting to see this.
So, like there are devices, if your device has a software, then cybersecurity kind of applies to it as well. Um, if you submit the 510K using the E-Star format that the FDA has, it's basically a dynamic PDF. So once you check things there, like what your device has, like does it have software, it automatically triggers the cybersecurity section. And that cybersecurity section is twice the length of the software section. And not only you are giving them the evidence that your device is safe through like you can do penetration testing and there are other some test methods as well. You also have to share them the your protocols and your processes, your procedures regarding how do you uh, conduct cybersecurity risk analysis and how do you make sure that once it's out in the market, you are tracking them and making sure that your device is safe from the vulnerabilities that have come later. So it's a lot more intensive than the software itself. Right. Anything else? Okay, I'll look forward. Once you have all that, you evaluate the risk. You basically create a table that has a probability levels and severity levels. And it can be like from 1 to 5 on probability and 1 to 5 from severity, 1 being negligible or improbable, and 5 being frequent and catastrophic. And then you basically divide them into three areas. Either it can be an insignificant or negligible risk. Above that is investigate further risk control, and on top it's unacceptable risk. So usually what people do is you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you do a multiplication of it, and basically you decide a range. So let's say 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 will be an insignificant risk, and then 1 like 11 to 15 can be your investigate further risk control, and then above 16 it's your unacceptable risk. Just to give you an example. And then using this table, once you have these, in front of it you have your what's it called? Um, okay, I've got it right here. Okay, so yeah, it starts with hazard ID, hazard, sequence of events, hazard association, harm, probability of occurrence, and severity of harm. From there, you get the risk level. So this part is basically your this table. So this table helps you derive the risk level of that particular harm, of that particular hazard. And the harm, severity of harm will be related to the harm itself. So you have to make sure that first you can create like a list of harms. So all the harms that you have identified, you assign a severity rating to them from 1 to 5, and then use that list as a data validation into your risk analysis. That way you can make sure that each of your harm has a specific severity rating. So uh, if we go back, let's say, to the patient problems, if we have specified the severity of vomiting 2 at one place, but if it's like specified 1 at another place, that will be uh, that won't be the same, and that can cause you issue later. And this is something that FDA looks at quite closely, making sure that your severity ratings are consistent across all of your documents. Regarding the standard and the clause, so if you are familiar with the IEC 62601 class of standards, they have their own uh, hazards in them. They have their own risk related clauses in them as well. So once you are done developing your machine, and you go the to like SGS or TUV to get the testing done for that particular standard or multiple standards, uh, they ask you the evidence that the risks that the standard talks about, like particular clauses of it, have you mitigated them or not? So risks don't not only come from your MDRs, but they also get derived from the standards as well. I'll come back on, I'll talk about the standard later on when we talk about the requirements, but they can come from there as well. So it's better that you include these columns into your initial risk analysis. This will help you drive a hazard traceability matrix. in a way that you're not only catering to the reported events, the MDRs, but you have risks coming from the applicable standards to your device as well. So if go back and show you here, so this is showing you the relevant standard to your particular device once I knew the product code. If you go there, it will be referencing to other 60601 standards as well. So it will direct you to others, and you'll have to go through each and every one of them to make sure that, uh, well, like if it's applicable to you, you are mitigating the risks that are mentioned in that standard. Okay. Coming to the initial requirements. So initial requirements are your very high level requirements to guide you and your development team in the right direction. So basically, what are we making? So once you have done your initial risk analysis, it will help you guide in the right direction. And once you have basically categorized your risks into low, medium, and high risk, then you can start with the high first and see how you can mitigate that risk. So there are three ways to mitigate a risk. Either you do it by design. So to give you an example, your examples are right there in front of you. I don't have to make anyone new. So you have examples right in front of you on how to um, make your design in such a way that it's inherently safe. Uh, if it's inherently safe, it means that it will have like a clear, uh, it's just very difficult to make that risk happen because it's inherently safe design that you're using. The second stage of it is to have a protective measure. So it's something that you can, let's say, incorporate in your manufacturing process, or it can be one of the alarms that you use. It can be a warning as well. And then the third will be purely, you can say, on the training side. Uh, so it can be incorporated into your labeling, your user manual. Um, it's either user manual or labeling or both. I will recommend both because there can be some circumstance where someone reads your label but doesn't read the user manual or vice versa. Typically, what you have on your labeling is also included in your user manual anyway. So these are the three basic levels of how to mitigate a risk. And this is basically your complete risk analysis. It covers the whole ISO 14971, and you won't have any issue if you do this, and not only on the FDA in the US market, but also in the EU and with the CE marking. You got your hazard ID, your standard and clause if some hazard comes from there, your hazard sequence of events, hazardous situation, and harm. You make that first in your initial risk analysis, and then you analyze them based on their probability of occurrence and severity of harm, and then you get calculate the risk level of it. Once you've done that, you identify the risk control and the risk control type. Obviously, one hazard can have multiple risk controls, so you can make them easily. Um, and then you have your new probability of occurrence or new severity of harm. So there are some circumstances where the severity of harm itself can change. An example would be that the heater, the exposed surface of a medical device can get too hot because it's a heater. So initially it was getting up to, um, let's say, 150 degrees Celsius. So that can give you like the extreme kind of burn. But the mitigation was that we put a controller into it. And then we also supplied it power in such a way that the maximum that it can go is like, let's say, like 50 degrees Celsius, right? So it has like a mitigation in a way that the max, like even if all of our safety systems fail, the maximum that it can go to is 50 degrees Celsius because there's already limited power to it, right? But even then, we have like added a temperature sensor and a temperature limiter, like the appropriate word for it, that can cut off the power to the heater. So, so if the user touches that, that is like a very less chance of a burn, of a serious burn. So in this case, you're decreasing the severity of harm itself. So there can be some very few, they're very few and very rare. Typically, the severity of harm is unchanged, but the option is there if it's applicable to that mitigation. You have your residual risk. So that will be the updated risk level based on the new probability and severity of harm, probability of occurrence and severity of harm. And then your reference to the derived requirements. So if you're using a software, typically you just refer the requirement IDs over here, and then you have a separate requirement document that talks more about the requirements itself. I'll come to that later. You make sure that risk is reduced as far as possible, and make sure that any of your mitigations don't result in any new hazards. If there's a new hazard that your mitigation is resulting in, you just refer the hazard ID and then just create a new hazard and start all over. So everything's kind of linked in a way. Then you make sure that the benefit is greater than residual risk. This is particularly in a case if the residual risk is not acceptable, then you can write that, and then it's basically like a yes or no, and then you can comment on the benefit risk analysis. So this is your whole risk analysis file, and you can like create multiple of those, one for design, one for process, one for user. It's called user-related risk analysis, URRA. And before that, it will be your preliminary risk analysis that you performed here. So all of those files will come up and make uh, your complete risk management file, basically. Yeah, and before that, you create a risk analysis plan. And in the end, when you perform all of this for all of your processes, your design, your processes, your manufacturing process, and your use-related risk analysis, you do a risk analysis summary report, and that's basically your complete set of files we'll call risk management file. Coming to the initial requirements, so that same TPLC database had pre-market reviews in them as well. So you can click on them, and these are publicly available 510(k) summaries that have your important information like the intended use, the relevant standards that they complied with, anything uh, unique that they did, or like any new um, if there's like a customized testing method that they used, it can include information regarding that as well. So it's basically the summary of a device. Um, this gives you a very good direction in which you should develop your device, and uh, and it will give you references to the relevant standards as well that apply to your device. So it's better that you um, go through all of those, but ideally, uh, your predicate should be the most recent one because that's the recent one that the FDA has cleared, and it can include standards that weren't included in previous 510(k) filings. from different manufacturers. So initial requirements can be derived from your predicate 510K summaries. Then you explore relevant standards, as I mentioned above. You perform an in-depth market review, so that's from your marketing team or your core management team, and you establish high-level requirements. So let's go through the requirements. So yeah, this is just another way of saying that standards, your risks derive your requirements as well because you're trying to mitigate those risks. And 510K summaries in your market, and all of these lead to your high-level requirements. So any questions so far?
I think we're good. It's going well so far.
Awesome. Okay, now I'm getting into the requirements section. So research and marketing requirements are your, some people call it user requirements as well. It has different names, but the thing to remember is that it is the topmost requirement of your device. So, and it's not, you are not specifying anything here. You're basically saying like it's something from the market, and that will be something like the device shall include a means of heating the dialysis solution prior to fill. So it's a very generic, it's very simple, it's very easy to understand for a layperson or like a common man, uh, because he doesn't know what's the appropriate temperature or anything like that. He just wants that I want this. It has to be heated, so like when it gets into his inside of him, it doesn't like, give him a cold shock, or it's not too hot for him, for example. Usually it's not too hot, it's just a cold shock. So that can derive your design input requirements. So you dig a little deeper, you see, okay, the body temperature is around that. So that will be our design input requirement, which is that the device shall be capable of heating the dialysate delivered to the patient in the range of 35 degrees Celsius to 37 degrees Celsius. So this requirement, this high level requirement derived for your another, can say like middle level requirement. Coming to the requirement types, this can be different, can be a regulatory requirement that you have to sterilize your device, for example. It can be a risk control, so there was a high risk or a medium risk that derived to your requirement. It can be functional, so that can be purely your related to your device. It can be performance based, so when it comes to like accuracy or consistency, it that typically falls under performance. You have your reliability requirements. So for example, this device should be able to work uh, consistently for like 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. Or if it's like a single-use device, you can add your shelf life requirements here as well. So the shelf life of it should be like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, like how whatever is relevant to your market. And then you have your safety and usability requirements, making sure that it's safe for the user. These typically come from your risk mitigations, but it can also be just purely market. So, for example, the colors on the caps that the patient is using, like for the accessory or for the device itself, they have to be like a certain color because they're already used to certain colors in your competitor's device. So you also have to make sure that if a customer or like a patient is coming from the competitor's devices, your device is similar, so he can have uh, he doesn't have like a huge learning curve in using your device. And because at the end of the day, even if your device is safe and you have passed all the standard testing requirements, if the end user cannot use your device or is making mistakes in using your device, that's ultimately your responsibility. And then you have to go back to the design port, and that would be like a usability challenge. So that's why FDA asks us to perform usability studies. They also called human factor studies. So we performed them before we go into the regulatory submission. So I'll come to that later as well. So yeah, at this point in time, you just create your high level requirements. Then comes the prototyping, the actual part of developing your medical device. So everything that we have done so far, it just guides you in the right direction. I don't believe that you should be designing or just touching any drawing related work before you do all of that, because it will just help you think about what you're making so much more in detail, and you'll have a clear understanding of what your device should be, what risks there are, um, and what market you are targeting. So if you're targeting, let's say, like a specific segment, it can have completely different requirements than another segment. It depends on the device and the market that you're going in. Coming to the prototyping, so it's extremely simple. You're not trying to make your device go to standard compliance testing at SGS or TUV or any other at this point. You're just trying to see if it works or not. So you set up the requirements, you build something that meets the requirements, you test it, does it work? You celebrate, and then get back to work again. If it does not work, you first identify did you test it right. If you didn't test it right, then you redefine how do you test it. If you tested it right and there's no issue with your testing itself, then you go back to the drawing board. You see if it is a design issue, if it's an assembly issue, a process issue, a user issue, and it can be anything at this point. It cannot even be your issue. It can be like a manufacturing issue because um, you didn't get the right part or the part was faulty or something. So you just basically do this over and over again until you come up with something that works. So your design input requirements, this is back to the requirements section again, but this time you're going a bit deeper. So the design input requirement that I used before was like the dialysis will be delivered to the patient in the range of 35 degrees to 37 degrees, and that derives your specifications. So mechanical specifications will be like, okay, to make that, I'm going with a heater. I will need insulation and an enclosure. I will need a temperature sensor to make sure that I'm in the right temperature zone. I'll need to do a flow path design to make that happen. Once you derive those specifications, you derive the test cases as well. So if I have a specification for that, I will have at least one test case that make sure that I meet that specification. So heat assembly material, compatibility and leak test, installation related, temperature sensor placement related, flow path design. I just use ChatGPT for this, but you just to give you an idea, um, it this will differentiate highly from your device and what in what direction you're trying to go. That's where your engineering team's expertise come in. There are multiple ways of heating something. There are multiple ways to do anything in engineering. So we basically uh, explore those areas and see what works, and then you build on those and refine that design over time. Similarly, you have electrical specifications, and then you will be defining how to test them, which will be we call a test case. So maximum power output, thermal rise time test, accuracy, response, immunity, safety cutoff, things like that. Right. Now to derive your electrical bolts, you will need software. So your closed loop control algorithm, your range limits, your fault detection and diagnostics, any software safety related specifications. So you can have one test case that can cover multiple specifications. You can have multiple test cases that cover a single specification. So it's up to you on how you develop them and how you link them with the specifications. And they all of them have to be traceable. So this is kind of the loop that you're going in. You build something, you test it, you update the requirement if you have to, you update the design if you have to, you update the test case if you have to, and then you just repeat this cycle over and over again. You start with the subsystems, and then you build on those, you refine them, you make sure that that subsystem itself is reliable. Over time, you can have a pumping subsystem, you can have a valving subsystem, you can have a heating subsystem, and you basically the final test is the reliability test. So if I define the uh, length of its service life, it's like let's say 10 years, then I'll see like, okay, for 10 years, this under normal conditions, this will open and close, or this will work for this much. Let's say like I'm using that device like 2 hours every day, like under normal operations for like 10 years. Then you will be like, okay, this valve opens up 10 times in under normal conditions in one operation, like within like that lasts for like 2 hours. So it'll be like, okay, 10 times it opens the 10 into 365, because it's we're assuming that you just do it once every day. So 10 into 365 into 10. So if you test your valving mechanism that many times, that and it's still working properly, you basically run it that many times and then do the essential performance for that particular subsystem, and see if it falls under your set criteria. If it does, then congratulations, you have a reliable subsystem, and you can, make it better if you have to. And similarly, you do that for all of your subsystems and make sure that they are all reliable itself before you put all of them together. So regarding the test cases itself, it will have some fields that you will develop and learn more about them over time. So obviously you have your test case ID. You need IDs to link everything together, make everything simple and easy to track. You have your title, you have your test case type. It can be performance, it can be fault insertion, it can be reliability. It's totally up to you. Estimated runtime. So if you enter that, like and update it, you'll have it will be easy for you to plan if you want to run certain testing for a certain subsystem or even the whole product. You can get like an estimated time of how long it will take. So it's easy to like define this on test case basis, and then it will just like you can calculate that later on instead of trying to ballpark it when someone from the management asks you how long it will take. The product that you're testing, because you can be developing multiple products simultaneously because they have to work together in a way to function. So you define your product, your test objective, your testing method, testing requirements, the acceptance criteria, your justification for acceptance criteria, your data analysis plan, test sample description, test sample type, test sample discussion, result summary, protocol deviations, conclusions. So all of these are referenced into the FDA guidance document that's related to the best practices when it comes to bench testing. And that will give you more information regarding what the FDA expects for you to have in those particular fields, like what information are they looking for. And then in the end, you have the steps of the test case itself, your step number, your step, and then your expected result. And once you perform it, it's called usually called a test run. So in front of every step that is executed, you have the actual result, your tester name, test result, and your timestamps. And there are few softwares that let you not only do that, but also give you information if the whole test run is passed or failed or not, and who did that, so that you can have that information as well. So, any questions so far? Penny, anything from your side?
Nope, none so far.
Okay, so that was prototyping. To give you an overview, uh, you create a traceability. Basically, that involves your requirements all the way to test cases and test runs, and you basically create a matrix type table. You can use softwares as well. There are dedicated softwares out there just for this to make sure that your executed test runs that are properly passed, they trace all the way back to your research and marketing requirements. So yeah, this is the uh, so yeah, once you're in with like a functioning product, you can initiate your usability studies. The standard for that is IC 62366, and there's an FDA guidance regarding that as well, applying human factors and usability engineering to medical devices. So over here, you create like a task list. So first, task number one is this, task two is this, task three is this, to basically operate your device. You establish a sample size and a sample type early on. So this directly relates to your intended use. So if my device is for adolescents, middle-aged, and old age, and it's for both male and female, and it's for both um, first time, like it will obviously for first time patients, but it's also for patients who have used the device previously as well, then that's like all of the groups that you have to cater to. And in prototyping, it's better to start early on because it will help you. So once you're like deep into the product development, you just get used to the issues that you're facing. Or like, yeah, it does this, it has this quirk. So if I do step one, step two, step three, it resolves. And it kind of like becomes second nature. So it you do need the outsider perspective on like, yeah, that shouldn't happen. That I shouldn't be, I don't have to learn that like it should just do what it's supposed to do, for example. So, um, so for example, like you're using a phone, you know one of the apps it like crashes. So if you like minimize it, remove all the background tasks, then launch it again, it works perfectly. And this happens so many times that you're just immune to it. Now it's like second nature to you. But you give that app to someone to try it out. They do that and they're like, oh, it crashed. Why did that happen? That shouldn't happen. So you can't be like, oh yeah, if you do this and this and this, it will like resolve it. You need to, you'll be like, okay, if you receive like 1,000 complaints from once you're in the market, that's not good. So you need to resolve those type of issues early on. And these help you with that. This help you with the um, basically a usability point of view, like if can it be actually used by the end user. So it kind of looks something like this. You have your tasks on your left side, hypothetical task failure, you perform your risk analysis, your possible root cause, possible risk control, and the evaluation of risk control. The effectiveness would be the human factors validation test and any revised risk analysis redesign needed. So this is kind of like your final thing that you do, but you start developing this early on to make sure that you are covering all the points regarding usability and the user himself. So just to categorize everything, these are basically the documents that you need or you develop over time. You have your design input, where you have your requirement documents, your specification documents, your system architecture. Your design outputs will be your design files itself, your design descriptions, your labeling, your user manual, the design reviews that you conduct throughout the life cycle, your verification and validation testing. So verification is basically uh, your this is was your specification and this was your test case. So you verify that you're meeting that requirement, your specification or not. Your validation is basically your end user going through your user manual and see if he can set up your medical device properly. He can actually start it, he can use it, and then he can shut it down properly. And then you have your traceability metrics that basically covers your high level requirements to low level requirements to your test cases and then to your test runs. So once you're in your prototyping and your R&D phase, you start developing, once you get to a certain level, you start developing your production related documents as well, your assembly instructions, your final testing instructions, any jigs and fixtures that are needed to assemble your device or make your device if you are manufacturing something as well. You perform a process validation, but this is not required during prototyping. Um, really, but you do have all the documents that you need to perform process validation later on. So you develop that documentation at this level. You start developing your service manual at this point as well because you start to get familiar with some servicing that your device might need over time. So you start developing that early on as well. So for the purchasing team, you develop your specifications and your drawings. So when you place an order for like your 50 medical devices that you need later on for testing, you are getting the right parts from your suppliers. You obviously will have a quality agreement with them at that point because you don't want to have 50 pumps that are not working or they're not of the right specification or something like that. And once you receive them, you start developing your inspection instructions as well. So, did you receive the right thing and does it meet the specific criteria that you have for that particular component before you actually install it in your device itself? And sometimes you do get a certificate of analysis or certificate of conformance that basically it's the your supplier saying that I've tested this, it's all good from my side. It's a certificate of that basically. You have your risk files, so your preliminary risk analysis, design risk analysis, your software. Design basically incorporates both mechanical and electrical. So, but you can like create mechanical, electrical separately if you have to. You have your software risk analysis, you have your cybersecurity risk analysis. If software cybersecurity apply to you, you have your whole process risk analysis, and then you have your use related risk analysis or use error risk analysis. There are some things in the miscellaneous that might or might not apply to you. That can be biocompatibility, your shelf life and aging, your cybersecurity, and any artificial intelligence, machine learning stuff. So that's why I've included in that as a miscellaneous. Any questions so far regarding what I just said a while ago? Anything from you, Penny?
Nope, we're good.
Awesome. Okay. Lastly, at this point, you have your medical device ready. You have all of your documentation ready that supports the development of your medical device, that it's safe, and you can confidently just following the procedures, following the forms, you can confidently recreate that device itself from your production team. Then you go formally into design control. So you just, at this point, you just do the compliance part, which is usually a waterfall. So you just go from prototyping to design control. Your quality team will guide you in this area better because once you're in your design control, then everything that you do, everything that you change, not only you have to update your design files, but you also have to update all the files that are related to the design. So if your part is getting updated, then you have to update your assembly drawings and all the drawings above it as well. That will be a new revision for that part. You have to update the assembly procedures, you have to update the inspection procedures, you have to update the drawings, you have to include the data sheets that are relevant to that component as well. So just to make sure that your purchasing team doesn't mess up and that you are getting the right part when it's received by the production team. And you're updating your risk analysis, you're updating your requirements and test cases if it affects them. So you have to update all of that once you're like in design control to formally update that design change. So that's why the ideal way, in my opinion, is to just do agile when you're prototyping. And then once you're confident, then do a waterfall later on for compliance purposes. It just makes things a lot easy, especially if you're a startup and your team doesn't have experience with the medical devices itself. Everything's released through your design control procedure, then you build your pilot builds. So following your protocols, your procedures, your inspection instructions, your assembly instructions, your final testing instructions, you perform them, you build them. And while building those and doing your verification validation studies, that's where you can perform your process validation as well. Because now you have all the documents that you need, your drawings, your specifications, your data sheets, inspection instructions, your assembly instructions, your final testing instructions. So basically, if your final testing is getting passed, um, and it meets that performance testing standard that's mentioned into your particular medical device standard. Um, then it's a good sign that you have your process is validated, but you still need that document to um, show it as an evidence that you have validated your processes through these like documents. So you do that, you perform your verification validation testing. So that's where you officially perform your verification testing, going through all your test cases and executing them via test runs, make sure they are passed. Your validation study will be now your official human factor study. Your clinical trials, if they're applicable to your device, and once you have all of these documents, you perform a regulatory submission. Other relevant topics that are very relevant to what I just talked about, but those weren't covered in this presentation. Otherwise, I would have just talked all day. So that would be how to get funding, because medical device business is kind of expensive in the start. You need a lot to invest into R&D as well as testing. I didn't talk about the intellectual property and patents. That's something that you need as a business, but FDA or any standard doesn't talk about this. They don't require this, but you need to need this as a business when you're trying to get funding. They want to make sure that your IP is protected and you have patents on everything. I didn't talk about the FDA inspections and your audits, your third-party audits, your post-market. That's like a whole area itself. So once you're out in the market, after you get the regulatory submission, what do you do then? Then you have all of these systems that just make your life easier and keep you happy when you're working. So all of these systems basically help you in just doing your work instead of trying to manage your work. So you can spend your time more efficiently. Your quality management system is regarding your ISO 13485. How do you manage your documents? How you manage your records? How do you control them? Your product lifecycle management, the bread and butter of your R&D team, your product development team. How are they managing the life cycle of the product? So basically, your requirements, your test cases, your test runs, issue tracking, bug tracking. It can also include um, your design. For example, um, this set of components is revision one, but if I change this certain component, that will be revision two. So things like that uh, that are like relevant to design. Think of it like your, your enterprise resource planning. That's where your production team comes in. It will make their life a lot easier, your production team and your purchasing team, or also known as supply chain team. So what part needs to be ordered? Uh, how much is it in the inventory? What are the anticipated or expected lead times? How much does it cost? How much do you need? If you're making like 50 machines, how much inventory do you need? When will it be available? Like when it will be received? When can you start producing them? Things like that. And also your purchasing documentation and your delivery documentation and things like that. You have your source control management systems. So sometimes PLM include those, sometimes they are separate. These make sure that it's similar to Git as well again. Your version control, I call this document V1, this document is V2, or these two documents are like different. Um, and just controlling the all the versions that you have of different files, OneDrive or Google Workspace. It like, when you're managing thousands of documents and uh, files, then Google Drive and OneDrive will get clunky very quickly. So that's where the dedicated source control management systems come in. I didn't talk about the different regulatory pathways that FDA has. I just focused more on the 510(k) part because that's the easiest. If you're not sure about regulatory pathways, it's just then I will recommend 510(k) because this will help you get step into the medical device business and get you to the market as fast as possible. Once you have once your business starts making, you get revenue, your teams get the experience of doing the medical device related documentation, then you can explore other ways like, okay, now I want to bring some innovation. So the revenue that your business is generating, that will help you drive your ambitious projects that might require clinical trials and things like that. And and then obviously you'll have enough um, money to hire regulatory consultants, and they will tell you all the different ways of you can do things, and they will guide you in the right direction basically. I didn't talk about CE marking, which you might need if you are planning to go to Europe. In vitro diagnostic devices, that's a completely separate field. So basically, you're like you take a blood sample, you analyze it, those kinds of devices, these kind of like fall into that area, and your drug device combination products. So you have not only you have a device, but you also have a drug involved. That's a drug device combination product. That's a whole separate field as well. Um, I didn't talk about that either. And that's it. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or need any information, please feel free to reach out, and I'm always happy to connect with like-minded people on LinkedIn as well. And any questions, please feel free to ask.
Alphabet, thank you so much. This was an extraordinarily thorough presentation. Medical devices in general are somewhat of a growing topic in this server, of course. As we continue to acquire more medical device people, I hope to see a lot more discourse on the devices themselves. So, for me personally, this was definitely a very interesting conversation and presentation. We do have a question by Yasmin Smith. What is a key component or some key components of determining the shelf life of your medical devices?
It goes back to your marketing requirements. So once you're like doing the market survey, you look at your competitors' products. You see like, okay, they are doing 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or even like 1 year, because it gets derived from the market itself. So once your device is out in the market, um, the patients or like the patients don't directly use it normally. Uh, so if you're familiar, there's like an RX symbol on some devices. So those are prescription only. So patients are making the decision, the clinics and the hospitals are making the decision, and the doctors that, okay, this patient needs this device. So they are prescribing them. And there are like very few that are kind of like exempt. So think of it like walking sticks and wheelchairs. So if you have like a device that is like a bit different than others, um, especially when the most of the population that we're targeting is already familiar with that device, they expect it to behave the same way or at least better. Think of it like phones. You get one phone, it's like, oh, this one offers 3 years support, but that one offers 5 years of software updates. So you will obviously go for like 5 years. So it's purely a marketing decision on uh, what should be your shelf life. because once you that comes from the market, that number will derive your design and development. Basically, like, okay, I've market requirement of, let's say, 2 years of shelf life. Then I have to design in a way to make sure that when I use it after 2 years, like right at the end of the its life, it meets all of the performance criteria that I have developed.
It's still so
Does that
amazing.
cover?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, no, I was just asking, does that cover the question?
Oh, yes, I would say that very sufficiently covers the question. It's so interesting to me how software makes such a drastic or takes such a drastic role in medical devices in general. Thinking about the space, I often think of things like implants, like fake bones and whatnot. So thinking of
Mhm.
software, and I guess things like continuous glucose monitors would be what immediately comes to mind. Having that effect, the process, the expiration date, and all these other factors is something just so completely different, I would say, of what I'm normally experiencing over on the pharma side. So it's very interesting from that perspective.
I mean, I have same feelings about pharma.
Yeah, yeah, I bet.
So yeah, the feelings is mutual.
Yeah. On
So
on
the,
that
the
note,
thing about
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. The thing about pharma is like you have specification and standard for every single thing, the temperature and the humidity levels even. We don't have that.
Which is interesting, right? Because you'd think, with the crossover being things being put into the body, there might be a lot
Mhm.
more sort of requirements from the medical device side of things, but it seems to be, and this might be a mischaracterization, but a lot more lenient.
Yeah, yeah. Compared to drug, I would say it is. Um, and that's where the predicate devices come in because there are a few things that they are not talked about in the standard, but you still need justification for your acceptance criteria. So that's where your predicates can help you. The 510K summaries, and you see, okay, what they have done there. And we had some instances where, we were looking for, like, okay, what's the justification for like 100 newtons, 1 or 200 newtons, like force. So the justification was that, like, it's not directly to a predicate device, but there's like another similar device that exists in the market that has the same, you can say, like a subsystem that is directly similar to ours. So that's why we use that as a criteria because that's already cleared by the FDA and it has the same interaction with what we are going with. So so
Gotcha.
that's what uh, so that was because FDA has already cleared that. So we're basically telling them that yeah, you did this for that particular thing. So this area works exactly like that. We got that requirement, uh, that acceptance criteria from there. So this is how it plays out. Not everything is like fully stated because it's a device. There are like multiple ways to do something.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
on slide 47, there's something that I'm thinking about now is the intersection of, drugs and devices, like through combination products. So I guess
yeah,
just as like an aside, and I know this is a different topic, of course, but, you know, typically from what I've seen, like if we look at state versus federal laws in the United States, for example, it tends to sort of start from the top and become more specific to what can and cannot be done according to the law, going from federal to the state level. Is it similar between drugs and devices? Like, if there's a combination product, do the medical device components now have to follow the stricter requirements as seen with like drugs, for example?
I haven't seen anything like that that makes a differentiation between federal and state. So, like, not, I haven't gone through anything like that. Like, yeah, this is cleared for all of these states except this state. Um, because the all the devices they go to FDA and like they just clear it for the US market. Um, I'm not sure on the drug side. It's not my relevant area. But when it comes to devices, I haven't come across anything like that that specifically states I think California has some specific requirements or like labeling requirements or something like that.
Uh huh.
But I haven't seen anything that okay, this device is cleared for US market except California or
Oh,
something
okay.
like that. I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I don't believe we have any more questions, but Alphabet, I do want to thank you so much. This was, again, a really riveting conversation and presentation. I thought, this is a very interesting topic, especially for, someone like me who's mostly exposed to the pharma side of things. So I look forward to
Mhm.
more future conversations as well.
Well, thank you. Looking forward to the like farmer conversations as well because that's one of the areas where I have no clue what's going on.
Absolutely. All right. Well, with that, everyone, thank you so much and have a good night.